The topics you send our way, they really do spark some serious curiosity.
Hmm.
And this week, getting into Bigfoot and Yeti, wow, definitely no exception.
No kidding. Just the names themselves, they bring up something primal almost.
Right, those like fleeting glimpses, the unexplained stuff out in the wild. We've got the material you shared here, and it's a really fascinating look into the myths, the supposed evidence, and just the folklore that keeps these creatures alive in our minds.
Mhm.
It's clear you're drawn to these mysteries, and, well, our goal today, our mission for this deep dive, is to really unpack these legends.
Try and figure out where the old stories kind of blur into the purported facts.
Exactly, and maybe understand why they still have such a grip on us.
It absolutely taps into something, deeply human, that pull towards the edges of what we know, wondering what's just out there.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, like the source material points out, is how Bigfoot and Yeti, they started in totally different places, right? North America, the Himalayas.
Worlds apart.
But they followed this surprisingly similar path, from local tales to, well, global enigmas.
Okay, let's start with Bigfoot then, North America. Your source digs into its roots in indigenous stories. Selam mentions the Salish tribe specifically, and their name, Sasquatch.
Yeah, Sasquatch. And it wasn't just like some random scary story they cooked up.
Right, it had deeper meaning.
It seemed so. The early narratives from the Salish and others often showed Sasquatch as kind of shy, elusive, deeply connected to the natural world.
Oh, interesting.
Sometimes even like protectors of the forest.
That's quite a shift from the image we often have today, isn't it?
Yeah.
The big, hairy, maybe aggressive thing.
Totally. A real contrast. Makes you wonder why that changed, right? Maybe as we got more separate from the wild, our view of it just got more fearful.
That's a really interesting thought, because a modern Bigfoot, like the source says, is this massive cryptid icon. It's everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Films, TV shows.
Ads even.
Yeah.
It's like the symbol of, I don't know, the untamed wilderness that maybe we feel we've lost touch with.
Exactly. Maybe it reflects a kind of cultural longing for something unknown, a feeling that there are still real mysteries out there.
Yeah.
And looking at that shift from a respected local figure to this global sort of monster icon, it says a lot about how stories twist and turn when they travel.
Okay, now let's jump across the world. Himalayas, the Yeti. The source stresses its importance to Sherpa and Tibetan communities. How's that different from the Bigfoot lore?
Well, Bigfoot's often tied to forests, right? The Yeti is all about the mountains, those huge snowy peaks.
Right, different environment entirely.
And for the Sherpa and Tibetan people, the Yeti is often this mysterious sort of ape-like being living way up high. It often carries this spiritual weight.
Spiritual, how so?
Sometimes a guardian of the mountains, maybe. Other times more like a warning. Don't disrespect this dangerous place.
Okay, so less forest guardian, maybe more mountain spirit, with a bit more of a cautionary vibe.
Perhaps, yeah. And the material you sent also talks about how Western explorers, mountaineers in the 19th, 20th centuries, they really pushed the Yeti into the global spotlight.
Ah, so that's when it blew up internationally.
Yeah.
Sounds like local stories met.
Mhm.
Western fascination.
Precisely. The tales they brought back, probably a mix of actual sightings, maybe misunderstandings, maybe a little romanticism.
Sure, adventure stories.
Yeah, they really grabbed the Western imagination, and it became the Abominable Snowman, this creature of pure mystery in one of the world's most remote spots.
It's really striking, that parallel journey. Local lore goes global cryptid. Twice.
Really makes you think about our fascination with the unknown, doesn't it? How these stories catch on and change.
Okay, so that covers the myths, the folklore side. But what about the evidence? Because that's always the big discussion with Bigfoot and Yeti, isn't it? Sightings, footprints, all that stuff.
Absolutely. And we have to say up front, just like the source does, that mainstream science hasn't found, definitive proof. Not for either one.
No smoking gun.
Nope. What we've got is this collection of anecdotes, circumstantial findings, like eyewitness reports. Thousands of them, the material note.
Thousands. What?
For both. Bigfoot usually described as, 7 to 10 feet tall, bipedal, dark fur, remote forests.
And the Yetis, similar descriptions, but in the Himalayas,
Yeah.
linked to big footprints in the snow.
Exactly. But then you hit the issue. Eyewitness accounts are subjective.
Very subjective.
Yeah.
And the source brings up misidentification. Bears. People in suits, even.
That's a huge factor. Human perception isn't foolproof, especially if you're startled or in a weird environment, and suggestibility plays a role too.
If you want to see Bigfoot.
You might just interpret a shadow or a weird shape that way.
Yeah. Okay, the footprints. The source mentions those huge Bigfoot tracks, casts up to 24 inches,
Mm-hmm.
like from Bluff Creek.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Yetis, those big barefoot prints in the snow, like the famous Eric Shipton photos from '51, that feels more tangible, doesn't it?
It does seem more concrete, at first glance anyway. But this is also where the skepticism really kicks in. Well, hoaxes are always possible, unfortunately. Some could just be faked.
Yeah.
Others could be known animal tracks. Maybe a bear track that melted weirdly in the snow or got distorted in mud makes it look bigger, stranger.
Plausible.
Science needs stuff that's verifiable, repeatable. Footprints alone, they just don't quite cut it.
What about photos? Videos? That Patterson-Gimlin film? That grainy footage is practically legendary in Bigfoot circles.
Oh, it's iconic. Achieved almost mythic status. And people still argue about it constantly.
Authentic. Hoax.
Some are absolutely convinced it's real. Others are just as sure it's someone in an egg suit.
And the fact we haven't really gotten anything clear since 1967, that does raise questions, doesn't it?
It really does, especially with cameras everywhere now.
And for the Yeti, the source says visual evidence is even harder to come by. Grainy photos, maybe. Those scalp things that turn out to be like goat hides or something.
Exactly. Debunked relics. Definitive photos or video. Seems to remain just out of grasp.
You'd think with trail cams, drones.
Constantly watching wilderness areas globally. But still, nothing unambiguous has turned up for either creature.
Okay, what about sounds? Audio recordings. Your source mentions alleged Bigfoot howls, those weird wood knocks in the Pacific Northwest,
Mm-hmm.
but less documented sound stuff for the Yeti.
Yeah, mostly just mentioned in Sherpa tales, it seems. Not so much actual recordings presented as evidence.
So how seriously can we take these sounds?
Well, they definitely add to the mystery for some people, but the big challenge is attribution. How do you prove an unknown creature made that sound?
Right. Could be anything.
Howls could be wolves, coyotes, wood knocks, could be woodpeckers falling branches, even people messing around, without seeing what made the sound. It's hard to say.
Right. Just noise. Okay, last bit of evidence. Biological samples. Hair, scat, bone bits. You'd think that would be the clincher, right? Find some Bigfoot DNA.
That's the holy grail for believers, for sure. But, the source material lays out whenever these samples actually get tested scientifically,
They turn out to be something known.
pretty much always. Bear, yak, dog, deer, you name it. That 2014 Oxford study is a great example. They tested alleged Yeti hair samples,
And
matched brown bear DNA, specifically a rare type of Himalayan brown bear.
so that could explain some sightings right there.
It's a compelling possibility, yeah. Shows how science can sometimes find ordinary answers for seemingly extraordinary claims.
It really underscores the scientific skepticism, doesn't it? All these decades, all these reports, but still no fossils, no bodies, no clear DNA. The source kind of acknowledges, yeah, maybe there are rare species out there we haven't found.
Which is true, but the scientific view is, look, for large primates, we'd expect some more concrete trace by now. Bones, clear nesting sites, something more substantial.
Makes sense.
And without that verifiable, repeatable proof, mainstream science has to classify them as cryptids, unproven creatures.
So, okay, if science isn't convinced, what are the theories trying to explain these persistent legends? Your source mentions a few.
Yeah, one that pops up a lot is the idea of a surviving prehistoric species, like Gigantopithecus, that giant ape from millions of years ago.
I've heard that one.
But the problem, as the source points out, is the fossil record. Gigantopithecus fossils suggest it walked on all fours, not upright like Bigfoot is usually described.
Okay, so probably not Giganto. What about just myth-identifying regular animals?
That seems much more likely for at least some reports. Your source suggests black bears, maybe standing up briefly, could look like Bigfoot in a quick, blurry sighting.
Especially from a distance or in bad light. Yeah, I can see that.
And for the Yetis, as we mentioned, those rare Himalayan brown bears could be mistaken for something else, tying back to that DNA evidence.
Makes sense. And then there are the psychological explanations. Pareidolia, seeing patterns where there aren't any.
Exactly. Our brains are wired to find familiar shapes, faces, even in random things like clouds or wood grain. So a weird shadow, a distant stump?
Could morph into Bigfoot in our mind's eye?
Potentially. Combine that with strong storytelling traditions, especially in isolated areas where these tales are part of the culture.
It keeps the legend alive.
These interpretations get reinforced by the stories people already know and believe. It's a fascinating mix, really. Why do you think we do that? Find patterns everywhere.
Oh man, that's a deep question. Maybe it's survival. Better to mistake a log for predator than the other way around. Or maybe just that need to find meaning or wonder.
It's a compelling intersection of perception, culture, and maybe that basic human itch for mystery.
So regardless of whether they're real or not, Bigfoot and Yeti have definitely carved out a huge space in our culture. The source talks about this too.
They really have. They've become these powerful symbols. Bigfoot, like the source says, often stands for the wild, right? Those untamed corners we imagine still exist. A reminder that maybe we haven't mapped everything.
Yeah, the call of the wild,
Yeah.
embodied.
And the Yeti seems to capture that mystical feeling of the Himalayas, the awe, the remoteness, the sheer power of those mountains.
A sense of the sacred unknown, maybe?
Precisely. And whether you believe or not, these creatures fuel adventure. They spark debate, skepticism.
Yeah.
They've even built whole communities.
Right. Researchers, hobbyists, storytellers, all focused on these figures.
It just shows their enduring power in our collective imagination.
Your source even gives concrete examples. Bigfoot Days festivals out in California, Yeti tourism stuff in Nepal. It's gone way beyond just campfire stories.
Oh, absolutely. These legends are woven into local economies, local cultures now, which is fascinating in itself how these unproven things have such a real-world impact.
And that local impact probably feeds back into the global fascination too, right?
Definitely. It becomes a cycle.
Okay, so bringing this deep dive toward a close, it feels like the main takeaway, like the source material emphasizes, is that the hard science isn't there. No solid proof.
They're right. Evidence remains elusive.
But the myths, they endure. Bigfoot and Yeti are this potent mix of old folklore, our drive to explore, and just powerful imagination.
They really do challenge us, don't they? Make us think about the limits of what we know scientifically.
But also remind us why we need that rigorous proof for extraordinary claims.
Exactly. It's that balance.
Ultimately, believer or skeptic, you can't deny the narrative power these figures have. They tap into something really deep in us, that connection to, or maybe awe of, the natural world's mysteries.
They stick around for a reason.
And it really leaves you thinking, given how these stories pop up and persist across so many different cultures over so much time, what does that persistence actually tell us about, maybe, the human need to push boundaries, to explore what we don't know, and to always leave room for the possibility of the unexpected out there in the huge, vast world?